Hi, this is yet another map analysis video. This time we're doing Gong G. It's by Squidski, Sam Raimi, and Seth. Those three names I had to memorize because alt-tabbing breaks my focus. So, let's talk about this map. As you can see, there's quite a bit of graffiti literally everywhere. And you can't even use it for lineups because it's facing an area where you're not going to be throwing nades at. Though I'm sure that's famous last words. Somebody will find some psychotic nade that you can use. Anyway, this is T-Spawn. This is one of those maps that actually has those little bits in the top left, the names. Always nice to see that. It's actually a map that I'm surprised only wound up in the honorable mentions because, generally speaking, the art for this particular map clearly went through a number of revisions and polish, and say what you will about what you personally think about the art style or anything like that in terms of how well everything meshes together, thematically speaking. To me, it seems very much like a foreign city / subway area. We'll walk through the whole map as usual, but just wanted to mention that the fact that this is only an honorable mention and not anything higher kind of surprises me. Especially since it's also one of those maps that's fairly simple to grasp, even though I think mostly you're going to be learning a lot of rotations, a lot of connectors and corridors and stuff like that as you mess around with this particular map. Sort of like Feast, which we did most recently, but obviously not quite to the same degree. Feast was a little bit more localized with it. So this little approach upstairs is going to take you towards A, and you also see the first one of those connectors that I was talking about, which takes you out towards mid. It says lower mid, but there is no height difference in that area until you start going towards either one of the bomb sites. So this little tunnel here, mostly going to be relying on the top left to tell me where I actually am or what to call things, so that I don't call things really strange things and then get laughed at. That tunnel leads you to the A bomb site. I haven't done rotation testing, but I've played enough games on this particular map to know, hey, things are fairly balanced, it seems. Going to be some interesting peaks about in this area. Oh yeah, don't mind these decals. I was throwing a lot of grenades earlier. So this particular site, you're probably going to be looking right over here, or maybe even right here if you get a good spawn. Hit some hops or something. Obviously, you could do a more daring peek, a little bit like this, and still be able to fall back and head to the back of the site if necessary. But one of the first things that sticks out to me about this bomb site is that, considering the skyboxes are open enough, now this will be where I can't remember exactly where the smoke lineup actually is, but it should be fairly simple. I think it's just something like this. But there are a couple of different lineups that you can use to completely smoke this area off. This is a connector towards, I guess you could call this upper mid, but it's the CT side of mid. And so you smoke that off to isolate rotations. I think you can aim it a little bit to the, you can go a little bit further down to the next set of stairs. And I want to say you don't have to be super specific about it. And I think it was like a jump throw around there, but there's something that I believe, yeah, that's not it. It bounces off of this and lands over here, and it blocks off not only that site area, like for you to be able to see out here from red house, but it also will block off a little bit of vision from any opper who's playing back A towards this area, which was, even though this is like a stock decal that's been copy pasted 10,000 areas, it's most notably from Mirage, but even though it's been copy-pasted everywhere, it is nice from a functional standpoint. You can definitely tell when somebody's up against it. And so you'll be able to see them when you're walking out here, but the smoke will also obscure their vision as well. So basically the smoke blooms, I would say around here, but maybe a little bit further in. It's not quite this powerful, so if you're like all the way on this side, you'll still be able to be seen and spammed through, presumably. But it does allow you to get to play a looser position over here behind the forklift dolly thing. Yeah, it's just a dolly. Behind the dolly, and shoot the player who's holding over here, if there is one. So, kind of forces CTs out of position. So the fact that there is a fair bit of open utility, and once you learn that lineup that I was talking about earlier that I forgot already, you can bounce something off of this or that and land the smoke right here. You wall off a lot of positions just with that one smoke. you start to work into the site relatively easily. It is going to encourage CTs to fall back a little bit more, or otherwise commit to trying to hold the Ts off as soon as they're getting in here. Or maybe throw down a smoke of their own or something, which could add to the confusion. The bomb site is a little strange in terms of where you can and can't plant. It's obviously with the spray paint is sort of what's telling you where you can and cannot plant. But then the bomb site plantable area kind of extends out a little bit to... I assume it's not supposed to extend this far out, but maybe that's fine. There should just be more clarity, because you'd think it would stop at the red line, or maybe this brick, but as you can see, I'm out of that, so I don't know what's going on there as far as the trim is concerned. I guess the same thing is true over here. But yeah, it's just a little strange that a very oddly shaped bomb site, in my opinion, and probably could be communicated more clearly. That being said, there are plenty of angles that you can take and hold. I think the most default plant you're going to see is something like right over here. And once you plant here, you can fall back either to peek them from red house if you do have mid control, or you can even do just a straight up dry run and plant there and then fall all the way back if you wanted to do all 5 out of A or something, and then you'd be easy to eliminate in theory. But the fact that you know where you're planting means it's pretty easy for you to just kill the guy who's defusing. So an interesting situation to be in as the terrorists, and obviously makes the counter-terrorists' job a little bit harder. So I think that'll be a fairly default plant. I guess you could call it mocha. But you'll also see some people plant over here and then peek from red house, I'm sure. You'll probably see a couple of different plants that'll be more useful for CT in the event that there's a wrap. I'll show CT in a second. But just one smoke eliminating so much definitely makes this site a little bit more interesting than it may initially appear. I think a running theme for this particular map is that there's not a whole lot of cover for any one team to benefit from. And in that case, you do have to be cognizant of the limited options, because some of them are going to be used every single round, or because there's less options to pick from, less angles to clear, therefore you can eliminate more with less utility, and it becomes a more tactically favored map, I guess, in general, but especially this particular bomb site. I imagine people are going to have a smoke for this, molly for that, and then either a smoke that's a little bit deeper over here to make the CTs have to commit if they want to, or have to give up the site and play retake if they don't want to commit. Will allow the Ts to really storm the site, but even then, if the Ts just want to plant and then fall back and save their utility, they can smoke molly and then maybe smoke this, or smoke the actual plant spot, and they'll probably be pretty safe. Of course, they could get spammed. It's a little bit more of a lower percentage play, but the fact that you can do all that without too much of an investment suggests to me that this map is going to be, at least particularly on this site, there's going to be a lot of rounds that live and die not by the actual execution of getting onto the site and planting the bomb, but the post-plant. And that's interesting. A long time ago, I did a wingman hostage map. I think it was called Renovation. And I talked about how it's sort of easy in that particular map to collect a hostage, but then you obviously have to make it back to your spawn. And because the map is so small and it's a 2v2 map, it becomes more of a game about stopping the CTs from returning with the hostage. And so after the objective has already been taken in one way, similar to planting the bomb here, the gameplay then becomes, neutralizing whatever threat posed by that objective. So that to me is kind of an interesting parallel. I just like the fact that there's a little bit of a wrinkle there. And in my tests, indeed, it was very simple to plant the bomb and then fall back and hold angles from there. Of course, the interconnectivity of the map, as shown earlier with this connector into mid, does make flanks not only a possibility, but rather attractive and probably inevitable in the grand scheme of things. And yeah, let's talk about CT rotations now, and then we'll move on to the next bomb site. So CT spawn is right over here. We got Bot America, and we got some moon runes. And yeah, I guess one thing that might be confusing people is the proximity of, well, there's a lot of graffiti in this area, and it doesn't immediately jump out to me as being, at the risk of sounding very culturally insensitive, It does not strike me as particularly Asian graffiti. So that might be throwing me off a little bit, but I also haven't seen many examples of that. So for all I know, that sort of street activity is a celebrated act in whatever place this is supposed to be. I didn't look at the lore. But this rotation is fairly quick, as you can see. You will probably be op-dueling, like I mentioned, at around here, behind Mocha, down tunnel, if you are a CT. The other obvious approach for you to take is to go down and peek out mid, which you can either do from a more safe location over here, waiting for people to push into mid as Ts, or you can try to hold from this upper spot on the dumpster, because there is a rotation from T spawn into mid and onto this dumpster, so you can kind of hold that angle if you want from over here, or probably even over here somewhere, like this. And otherwise, you've got a situation where you have to push out a little bit further if you want to take some more aggressive information peaks. And I would actually recommend doing that from the B-bomb site, even though you're going to be doing a much longer rotation there in order to get there. So the information can come late but safer, or a little bit riskier but earlier. And that's how I think how things are balanced, generally speaking, which I think is fine. So we've basically covered everything on the A side of the map. Now I will show you the B rotation from CT, and then we will come full circle and fill out the rest of the mid. So I guess first things first, I'll show off that late rotation to B, or rather to mid from B side, from the lower. So we have a situation over here where you're going to come up to the right of that owl sign, and you'll be right about here. This is the safer information play, just because you can jiggle peek this very small angle, and before even that you can jiggle peek this, and even before that, because they could be out here, you can jiggle peek this, try to see where they are. Obviously you can be a little bit further back to expose less of yourself, to see if there's any CTs already holed up here, but presumably you would at least know information about that, because your other mid player would be looking at that, and maybe they get smoked off or something. There's a fairly easy smoke you can throw to smoke that guy off, but the main takeaway from this is it's a super long rotation, and it's pretty much just you going around in a U shape. And as much as I'm a fan of the letter U, I really don't see a whole lot of utility to this particular shape. I would say that this is indeed a criticism of the map design. Now, I understand the reason why it's there from a functional standpoint, right? It's there to slow down rotations for both teams when they do decide to make it over there, and to make it very noisy if they are going full speed. The time thing being the more important of the two of those goals that are accomplished. I feel like there should have been some effort to make that a little bit more simplified, perhaps, to, in general, make it a little bit less of a bunch of corner turns. You know, you feel like you're in a NASCAR race or something, just doing a lot of left turns. I'm not a fan of that. I think that there should have been, again, more of a simplified way to deliver a lengthy rotation to the B-bomb site from middle without, that. Now, obviously, if you end up having deep mid control and you can wrap to A, you can also threaten to go through CT spawn as a terrorist and hit the B-bomb site. I feel like this connector will not be used too often by terrorists, but CTs can obviously take it relatively easily, should they know that they have one guy A, one guy mid, and then maybe the B anchor fell back and they're in a 3vx situation. The two guys can just safely rotate through the CT side and really only expose themselves to enemy action when they hit to this rotation at the bottom of these stairs. Then they're going to wind up in a situation where they're going to be taking contact over here looking into the subway area. So that is what it is. I think, again, because it's so far out of the way, it's very unlikely you'll see terrorists use this. By very unlikely, I mean I'm sure it'll happen once or twice every game, but it's not going to be super often. Like, it's relatively niche, I think. And that's fine. I'm not really against niche areas. I think they have their place. But I did want to point that out. And the other thing that I think I should mention is that despite the difference in architecture, despite the trim and the bath tile wall and whatever else they got going on here, it does look kind of similar. The connector and the B wrap area look rather similar when it comes down to the stairs. They sound similar as well. I think it's just going to be a bit of a headache for players. Maybe you could convert one or both of those into an escalator. Well, I guess you would only want to do one so that there would be some diversion or diversity rather. So that would be my suggestion, is to convert something into an escalator. That's something we haven't actually seen too often in Counter-Strike, I don't think. I know for a fact there's a couple of custom maps I've played that have had escalators, but despite the fact that it would mean a lot of potentially wasted, quote-unquote, art that was designed here that would not be used in the final cut, I do think that that would open up things to, for one, be more straightforward and more sensible from an architectural standpoint. And for another, I think in general, you'd end up seeing more immediate understanding of where somebody is. You could end up putting some different sound cues there. Maybe that could be something that has those metal detectors that we've seen in a couple of maps. I know Apollo is a hostage map that was released somewhat recently, not for this particular map core contest, but that has those. Obviously, what is it? It's not Office. I think it's Agency. Agency has that as a hostage map as well. And the metal detector is used to enforce a sound cue, similar to like the whole lower B-bomb site on Nuke that I give the example of a few different times in my other videos. So that's just one of those situations where I think it's worthwhile to criticize this particular setup. I don't really have a significant amount of suggestions as for how to fix it. I think they have their work cut out for them if they do decide to try to address that and improve that in any way. Because again, for timing's sake, that is very important, and it does add a balance to middle, and it adds a balance for like not just the defending team being able to rotate there faster if they need to, but also, of course, the offensive team being able to rotate down there. So it changes a lot about the map if they simplify it. A really troll idea that you could have is making the escalators work in one specific set of ways, and like they're always going up or something. So it still slows people going up, but it actually increases their speed going down or something. That could be a troll way to do it. And maybe you could even make that interactable if you wanted to go super feature creepy and make it so that one team could, toggle it or something by pushing a button. We should have more interactive elements in CS maps, I think, but that's probably a too banal an idea to take off. As far as what I would actually do in that situation, I think I probably wouldn't have it have any impact on your movement speed, but the escalator would probably be an idea that I would explore anyway, so maybe that will be useful for people. Now, onto the B-bomb site proper. This is another one of those strange bomb sites where it's very thin, actually. You've got the spray paint, of course, trademark of this particular map. You can't plant it up against this pillar. You have to get a little bit further in. And you can't plant it over here. This is probably my preferred default spot, but it does require you to have some sort of utility onto the site. Super easy to throw utility onto the site, though. I'll show you that in a second. This would be the T-long area. Of course, you've got the classic vending callout, borrowed from Nuke, presumably. Nice glare. Can't even read whatever that's supposed to be. I guess it's just a bunch of zeros anyway. 3 zeros to be exact. Again, not a whole lot of cover to walk out on. Very, very sparse in terms of cover. And that is just an attribute of the map. Make of that what you will. If we roll all the way back out to T-spawn and then rotate over there to give you guys a little bit more grounding as to what's happening, this is the approach to middle, the main approach to middle for the terrorists. They can either take a right over here to peek them from lower, peek the CTs up mid from lower. They can also go up here onto this dumpster that I was mentioning earlier to get a better peek, probably an interesting op-dual angle, but happens relatively late into the round for the terrorists. The timing does not favor them. Or they can come down here and go towards B, where they're once again faced with two different pathways. This is actually glass at the beginning of every round, similar to that. So that would need to be popped before they can actually do anything. But otherwise, it's pretty simple to line up a smoke grenade from just about anywhere. Basically where the, right over here where the cleft palate thing is over here. That's not at all what that is, but I felt like saying cleft palate apparently. So there you go. And that will smoke this area off to allow you to plant safely right here. The reason why it's good to plant over there is because if you stick yourself into the corner over here, which is easier than I made it look there, you can toss a nade pretty much anywhere, I think. And it bounces off. Like, there's this nade that will bounce off, and Molotov bounce off the train that will burn anybody who's planting. You could also do something like, I think it's this one, which bounces off a little bit differently. It's about like a little bit less than halfway across. That bounces directly onto where you would be able to plant. You could just do this. Or no, it's the same lineup as before. where you're throwing it around here. That does a little bit of a different lineup, so if you wanted to plant a little bit deeper, you could. You could do the same thing with a frag grenade if you just wanted to do damage. Pretty simple. That one will work for the default plant that I was talking about earlier. And a lot of utility can be used in a post-plant scenario where they have no chance of hurting you at all whatsoever unless you get flanked from mid. So that's where, sort of in a different kind of way, you have a situation where you can avoid contact with the CTs, even, actually, unlike the A-bomb site, even when they are not defusing the bomb or are not in the middle of doing anything in particular. So because of the fact that you don't have to worry about facing the counter-terrorists in this particular angle, I mean, yeah, they could smoke it, but you could nade it. I don't know if you can wallbang it. That's what I was going to test there. So I guess I'll line it up with this. Looks like a no. Not allowed to. Not even in this area. Well, rest in peace. Oh yeah, this is a great piece of wall-bangable cover. That's if you end up taking a deep fight as a counter-terrorist. You can spam through that. I did that a lot. Pranked some men. This little squeaky area over here is the other pathway into B. And bots have a hard time navigating this area. Please fix. Otherwise, just like other doors out there, they can get damaged and eventually destroyed. So I'm sure there's a lineup that would help you out with that if you wanted to. It would probably be something like a two-handed throw, I would imagine, but maybe not. Maybe you can do it just with this. Yeah. Yeah, so that would be a situation where that would probably detonate the doors. I guess we can restart. There we go. So again, like I said, it's glass. Pop it. And then if you wanted to do that, you would do what? What was the lineup that I used? I forget. I'm sure you could figure it out for yourselves, but I need to know right now. It has to happen. What the fuck was it? Wasn't that one. That one will do. So there you go. Mystery solved. So if you need to do that, you can do that. That's pretty useful. Everybody who's played Nuke knows why it's useful to nade a door. You can nade the door while your teammates are rushing in. Apparently, it's not going to damage them at all because it's so far away, but it'll damage the door enough to blow it up, and then you can immediately roll in here and plant with that. I imagine that there could be like a dedicated utility guy, actually. He pops that... Somebody pops it for him or whatever, the little glass pane there. And then he throws those two grenades. You pop in, and I'm sure he can throw a flash for you or something. That's a hilarious flash. What the fuck? All right, so maybe he can't throw the flash because he's like me. I'm sure it's possible. There you go. That works. That's perfect. There's probably an easier like pop flash or something. You just throw out like that one. Like you threw the smokes earlier. That should do it. But keep in mind that that pillar does obscure a lot. So you still have to be worried about coming out over here. So that's probably where you would want another smoke lineup. Maybe the same smoke lineup that the Molotov lineup is. You can just throw that instead of the deep one, and then you can use that for quote-unquote safe planting. And there you have it. So that is the B-bomb site in a nutshell. I guess we can talk briefly about the different middle fights. I think I already showed all of these, though, at this point. This is definitely going to be a rotation that people are going to take. You're going to have probably the Opper come out over here sometimes as on the T side to take peeks towards this area, and then after they see nothing over here, they would transition their aim over here, just because it's very unlikely. I guess actually, on the contrary, as the counter-terrorists, you could jump out over here and then take this peek and hold this angle. That would be a way that you could take the, catch them off guard. But to me, it seems like it's more likely for somebody to hold this angle or something like, peek out of here. That being said, the op still probably has more utility on one of the sites. This lower bomb site, this B bomb site, naturally lends itself to more tight engagements just because it's a little bit less open, but not that much less open. It's kind of deceiving because of all the walls. It's really not that significantly more open, or less open rather, than this particular bomb site. This bomb site the bomb site itself is more open, but the pathways there are not. So definitely constrains your ability to move around. Now, unfortunately, it does not appear that you can boost onto this. Now, can I? No. Okay. That is completely off limits. And so is this. So rest in peace, your dreams. I do wish that there was more spots like... well, apparently I can't stand on that. But I wish there were more areas to elevate your Z in some of the other parts of the map, particularly in areas where you're going to be saving a lot. I think it helps to be able to do that. So, you're probably going to be saving from here if they're on B, or even from here. And also in T-spawn or CT spawn, you're probably going to be saving if they have either one of the sites, but especially the A-bomb site. And so it might make sense to give the CTs a little bit more of a positional, or ways to modify their positioning so that they can get a positional advantage, possibly. That's just something that I find ends up being an element of most of the successful maps out there. Because otherwise CTs are just going to want to save in the T-spawn, based on the fact that it has more elevation. And, well, more angles, I guess. Obviously the mattress over here and stuff, which makes an interesting sound when you land on it. Does not sound like a mattress at all. But, yeah. Well, there you go. I mean, that is the map. That is Gong G. Aside from the B-bomb site having that really, really wacky rotation, I think that the map definitely favors tactics on both bomb sites. There's a lot that the terrorists can do without having to actually look at the CTs once they've planted the bomb, especially on the B-bomb site. But I think you could probably also find some pretty good lineups. That'd be something like... you planted for Mocha, right? And so I guess an after plant smoke would look something like this. Alright, well, I suck. So you'd throw that smoke there, and then, you wait to hear the defuse, and then throw that there. Something like that could definitely do the job. As far as a Molotov for... Remember that position that I was talking about earlier? I want to say something like this could do it, but I really don't know. Because again, remember, that's smoke is going to be covering you, but I don't know if you actually take damage. You do. Okay, so that could definitely work, but again, I want to find stuff that's like decently easy enough for lineups. And that one will not work. I find that it generally tends to spread in the direction that it impacted in. So, yeah, you kind of have to be a bit more open for this particular throw. I'm wondering if it's not impossible to find a hit. It probably is not possible to find a hit from so far away. So that's where you'd have to rely on smokes, perhaps. But still, that being said, that will probably do. Yeah, especially if it spreads like that every time, you're actually gonna Molotov everybody who's in that position. So you just be here, and what was it? I think it was just aiming above the crate or something. Yeah, so to the right of the leftmost line. So something like that should work out. This time it didn't Molotov him off in this particular angle, so got to be careful about that one. But there's a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. So find that nade, man. But yeah, again, there's a lot you can do to take the site utility-wise. I'm sure there's stuff that CTs can do that I haven't found. Particularly, I imagine flashbangs. There's tons of them. But even smokes, like, you can probably just use this dumpster to peek for info, for example. Pretty easy. Now, obviously, you are exposed, which is why you'd want to do it something like... Maybe you'd actually want to fully jump across. Or not fully, because then you get exposed from a different angle, but you don't want to stop yourself short there. Or you could do something like this, which is harder to hit jump because you're a little bit less exposed. And then, you know, you could do that with a Molotov in your hand and then throw that. Pretty easy stuff. So, yeah, there's ways for all of the players to get shit done in that sense. All the teams to get shit done. Obviously, I didn't really talk about it, but when you're coming in here, if this isn't popped yet, you just throw a flashbang normally through this and then rush out with it. And because it has to break the glass, it kind of gets stuck midway through and it pops like in the middle of the air. So it's telegraphed, but you could have somebody fire a shot with it or something so that it feels like, you know, that somebody's just shooting it normally if you really wanted to. I don't know how you would want to do that, but the idea behind it is that you would flash anybody who's rushing in here. So there's ways that both teams can impact the map. And obviously CTs have a positional advantage. They actually get to both bomb sites faster than the Ts do. So I guess it's only natural then that the terrorists would have more of a utility-based advantage and more options going into it. I think it's a fine way to constructionally produce a map for CS. Obviously, I'd like the bots to be fixed. That would be nice. I almost said boxes. And yeah. Pull that guy out of his rock. Let me know what you guys think of this map. I think a little cluttered, for sure. But that's just visually. It's actually no clutter, basically, when it comes to a lack of cover in many respects. Probably smooth out some of the clipping over here. I should probably just be able to walk up here from this, even though maybe it's not so realistic. Oh, you could probably do some interesting shit over here as well. Oh, I thought that was further away. Well, it just sucks anyway, but that's bangable, so get banged, and yeah. Bye.